under the aegis of the Direct Tax Committee of the ICAI. We have 5 days of great learning planned on very relevant topics. Today's topic is on significant issues of income from capital gains concerning non-resident Indians. For day 2, we have a discussion on recent developments and relevant issues under penalty provisions. Day 3 is on precautions and recent developments related to computation of business income. Day 4 will have the topic of the season, tax audit amendments. Day 5 will cover significant issues in income from salary, other sources, and clubbing of income. Before we start with today's session, I'd like to ask our chairman, CA Ranjit Warrior, to welcome the participants and also our speaker of the day, CA Pradeep Kapasi.
Most respected and most honorable Central Council member, CA Babu Ibrahim Kallivel sir, very revered and a legend on direct taxes, Pradeep Kapasi sir, Secretary of the branch, Deepa Varghese, Treasurer of the branch, Alan Joseph, past chairman, Srinivasan sir, Roy Varghese sir, SICASA chairman, Salim Rashid, most respected participants from across the country, very good afternoon to you. As the prelude says from Alan, that we've got a 5-day refresher course, thoroughly enriching a great array and a great list of a menu of topics and speakers that we've had lined up for the next 5 days, with the opening batsman being Pradeep Kapasi sir, with a very relevant and a very vital topic that he is going to deliver to us today. As all of us know, this is under the aegis and guidance of the Central Committee on Direct Taxes, where Ernakulam branch is very happy and privileged to be hosting this for a national refresher course of this sort for our members and for members across the country. With great support and with great guidance, as all of us know, for any Central Committee program that we look forward to hosting, it is just a mail that is required with a copy only to Babu sir's mail ID. And that itself gives us the direct approval for any Central Committee programs. No, it is that kind of a support, it is that kind of a guidance, and he rightly tells us what is the right time for what and all of those. So indeed grateful to Babu sir and my respected committee members for taking this is our 3rd refresher course of the season after GST and corporate laws. Today, as all of us know, we've got Pradeep Kapasi sir, who's a very revered and a very well known among all of us at the Ernakulam branch per se and across the country for direct taxes. And in the way that I've been closely interacting for the past few days with regard to this topic and with regard to this program, the effort in which he is putting himself into combining and condensing all these capital gain relevant sections together for the great interest and for the relevance of our members. So he comes up with each and every small suggestions. Ranjitji, shall we do this? That will be more beneficial. Shall we add that? Will that be more beneficial? So that is the kind of effort, in spite of the kind of stature that he carries. Let me at the outset, on behalf of the 190 odd registrations and 190 odd members that have registered, let me take this great moment to wholeheartedly welcome Pradeep Kapasi sir for the inaugural day session today, sir. We are also joined by our esteemed council member, Babu Ibrahim Kallivel sir. As all of us know, the kind of effort that he puts in. Tomorrow again, he is off to Delhi for branch matters. So a lot of things that is happening also for the branch matters, I should be correcting on that. A lot of things that he's been putting around in spite of his 27th year in service for our profession of our members and students. Let me once again wholeheartedly welcome Babu Ibrahim Kallivel sir for the inaugural day session today. My most eminent managing committee colleagues that we have, Secretary of the branch, Deepa Varghese, Treasurer Alan Joseph, my past respected chairman who has brought in glory to the Ernakulam branch, Roy Varghese sir and Srinivasan sir, Salim Rashid sir, SICASA chairman, wholeheartedly welcoming my managing committee colleagues to the program today. As I said, we have 167 registrations. Now I'm given to understand 190 again now. So there are a lot of registrations and calls coming in from across the country. So wholeheartedly welcoming each one of the participants. And I should also in absentia be thanking and welcoming our Chitale sir, who's the chairman of the Direct Taxes Committee, and Satish Gupta sir, vice chairman. No, they couldn't unfortunately make it today for various reasons and pre-commitments. Wholeheartedly in absentia welcoming and thanking the Central Committee for all the support and guidance. And once again, let us have a great 5 days of learning ahead, relevant topics, relevant speakers, speakers of great expertise and experience lined up for all 5 days. Look forward to personally as well, look forward to listening to each one of them on the great topics that we have. So wholeheartedly, once again, welcoming each one of you, and let us have a great time of learning ahead. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chairman. May I now call upon our very own Central Council member, CA Babu Ibrahim Kallavel, sir, who also happens to be the Program Director, for a special address.
Very distinguished and very learned, very eminent, I would say, authority on direct access. And more than that, my old friend, Chartered Economist Pradeep Kapasi ji from Mumbai. I think I've been fortunate to invite Kapasi sir for the first time to Kerala as a speaker. And since then, I think for the last 25 years, we have been continuing that very strong bonding and relationship. I'm very happy to see you after a very long time, and that too at the program organized by the Ernakulam branch. Very esteemed chairman of the branch, CA Ranjit Warrior. Actually, he is bedridden for the last 1 week. He cannot walk. Many participants won't be knowing. And one, because he is having a wound on his leg and it is paining, which if you now closely watch his face, you will be able to make out that normal vibration is not there on his feet. But still, he handles all the matters irrespective of nothing has happened. That is a kind of energy and enthusiasm our chairman is having. Chairman, we wish you a very speedy recovery, because our chairman cannot, without our chairman being very active. We know the branch also will have its implications. Therefore, it is also in our larger interest. I should say, charming secretary of the branch, Deepa Varghese, treasurer Alan, two past chairman, very bright smile, Roy Varghese and Srinivasan, and other dear participants who has joined in large numbers. Extremely glad. I think Joman K. George is also could not join us today. I should also thank Chandrasekhar Chitale, the chairman of the Direct Tax Committee, who has forthwith sanctioned the request of the Ernakulam branch to host this 5-day conference here virtually, and also Sadish Gupta. Sadish Gupta is also vice chairman with me in Professional Development Committee. Therefore, he is also the vice chairman of the DTC. And all of us will agree that direct tax continues to be one of the mainstream practice for many of us, especially those practitioners in the Mofussil area. Probably other than metro areas, direct tax continues to be one of the most important practice area, and that is also reflected in the participation by the members. And direct tax collections continues to be a one of the important landmark for the economic vibrancy of the country. You know, in the COVID pandemic, in fact, economy was also lagging, but it's a good news comes always in the way of direct tax collection indication. India's direct tax collection in the first 2.5 months of 21-22 stands at nearly 1.86 lakh crore, double the collections over the same period of last year that was affected by the national lockdown. And the economists said that the collections suggest that the first quarter of this year could record double-digit growth. The jump in the direct tax collections for the first quarter of 2021-22 relative to quarter 2021 reflect the healthy exports and a continuation of various industrial and construction activities given the lower stringency of the staggered regional lockdowns in 2021 versus the national lockdown of 2020. This supports our expectation that GDP will also record a double-digit expansion in the months to come. Therefore, it's a good news for all of us that direct tax is also, and chartered accountants are one of the important intermediary, and always the finance ministry used to value the services. Especially, it has been quite visible when the income tax portal could not take off. The first SOS came to the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India to give the suggestions, and the institute promptly formed a crisis group and give their valuable suggestions, which has been acknowledged by the Honorable Finance Minister officially. Therefore, I think definitely to hear Pradeep Kapasi will be a feast of knowledge, and I'm sure you all will be very excited to hear one of the national level speaker and authority on direct taxes. Sir, thank you very much for accepting our invitation, and we are all eagerly waiting to hear from you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Babu sir. It is my honor to introduce such a distinguished speaker, CA Pradeep Kapasi sir. Pradeep sir leads the chartered accountancy firm, Pradeep Kapasi and Company, based in Mumbai. He is a past president of the prestigious Bombay Chartered Accountants Society as well as the Chamber of Tax Consultants. He has co-authored several books on various topics, including search and seizure, taxation and accounting of shares, as well as on wills and succession. He's a regular contributor of articles in various magazines, newspapers, and journals, including the Bombay Chartered Accountancy Journal, PCAJ Journal, as well as the Economic Times. Pradeep sir also finds time for traveling and is also a regular trekker. His charitable initiative, Prayas, organizes winter warmness drives in tribal areas of Maharashtra. So we are all looking forward to your session. Please start at your convenience. Thank you.
Thank you. My very dear friend, Babu.
Thank you, sir.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Chairman, Mr. Warrior, Deepa, Alan, Mr. Verghese, Mr. Srinivasan, my seniors, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure to be a part of this August participation, UNOC. And I congratulate you, UNOC, on this, on devising such a wonderful and ambitious program. As I was going through the program and the subjects therein and also the speakers, I was delighted for the reason that, it covers a wide canvas relating to, the current issues in the practice of direct taxes. Babu is right, when he says that direct taxes continue to be the most important, area of practice for all chartered accountants who are in practice, and those who are not in practice but are in industry or are in profession through some other concerns or firms. They also, for them also, the real, area of practice continues to be direct taxes. Had it not been so, you would not be having, about more than 20,000 cases which are delivered by the courts and tribunal year after year. That is the normal, had that not been litigation, had that not been the direct taxes being the prime area of practice, you would not be getting this many decisions. So it continues to be very, very relevant. It was in the year 1998, my friend Babu would remember that, in that year he had invited me to speak on, I still remember, that topic was presumptive taxation. And in those years, presumptive taxation was one of the relevant issues because around that time the subject was introduced. And we had just wonderful time. And fortunately, that wonderful time of 1998 continued, since then for the next 23 years.
Wherever that was a year I was sitting on Ranjit Warrior's chair.
Yeah, that you were the chairman at that time. Very true, very true. But you were so unassuming, like you are today, that nobody really felt that you are a chairman or otherwise. From day one, you had become a friend. And I'm happy and proud to say that, yes, that our friendship whether we meet regularly or not, see that vibration, very vibrant vibrations are always there, And thereafter we had met at several places, maybe that Bhopal or Pune or many other places, So it had been wonderful. The only place where you have not been able to meet me is my hometown, say, right? So therefore, next time when you come to Bombay, please make it a point to meet me and Nina. Even Nina is too eager to meet you, right? So therefore, she has given her special regards to you. Yeah.
Many of the audience may not be knowing Nina ma'am is also a chartered accountant and partner with him and a prolific speaker,
Yes,
like
yes.
Pradeep Kapasiji.
She has also visited your branch as a speaker, and both of us over the year, like see, we have become very good friends with your secretary Victoria. So whenever we have a chance, I don't miss a chance to speak to her. Give my regards to her too. There is one single thing, I just can't resist to talk about Babu, which I keep on repeating many times. See, whenever we meet, see, we share a common joke that who is more popular, whether he is more popular as a central council member or I am more popular. So, and he invariably tells me that, okay, look, sir, you are nothing in front of my popularity. I'm so popular world over that that you are just a shade of that popularity. So I say I would, like any good lawyer, I would tell him that, okay, go ahead and prove that you are popular. So once he took me to Rome, in presence of Pope. So Pope, he said that, look, I will prove my popularity by visiting Pope, and he will come in a gallery. You can't accompany me. So you be there outside the Vatican and you just observe, see what is happening, Turkey. So it so happened that, after some time, Babu and Pope, both of them came in the gallery, Vio's gallery. And somebody asked me that who is the person, say, who is standing next to Babu. So you can appreciate that, what is his popularity, that people do not know Pope, but they surely know Babu. So this is what is his popularity. I wish him all the best, see, and so, all of you must be aware, but there is something, see, on a more sincere level, that his services to ICAI is unparalleled. See, because I know so many members, so many central council members, presidents, vice presidents, office bearers, the kind of commitment which he carries is unparalleled. See, right? Well, for years after years, terms after terms, see, he has, and I keep on hearing things about him from very senior people, A, that he is very committed, and B, very, very non-controversial, absolutely uncontroversial. It's very difficult to get in these times a person like him. So I wish him and his family all the best. And with this, see, please allow me to carry on with my subject. Yeah. One more thing I would like to.
I am honored, sir.
No, my pleasure, always. That's why I said I started with my dear friend.
Thank you, sir.
And not very respected, because over a period a friend, commands a greater respect, and you don't need to address him with respect. That respect will always remain with me as long as both of you are around. Thank you so much, Babu. I am singularly impressed with your chairman's commitment that in spite of being wounded, see, he has desired. I mean, he has joined us. I wish him a speedy recovery. His initial remarks were very impressive. I'm impressed. See, not a week passes wherein, I don't participate in one conference or another, webinar or seminar. The preciseness with which you spoke, see, the respect which you gave to your seniors, including your past chairman, and also to your office bearers is remarkable. I wish you all the best. Please keep it up, Ranjit. I would like to, meet you again and again. It's a wonderful pleasure, right here. With this, see, I may be allowed to, address the topic which has been allotted to me. Just give me a moment. I'll share the screen. Yeah. Is the screen visible to all of you?
Yes.
Yes, very well. Yeah, right. So we would be discussing capital gains, in general, relating to mainly individuals, but specifically to non-resident individuals. And wherever possible, we will try to concentrate ourselves on recent developments for the reason that, the August participants and audience, which I am having this today, most of you would be aware of the regular provisions of the Income Tax Act, be that concerning non-resident individuals or the other cases. The talk is centering around the capital gains taxation, NRI specific general provisions, special provisions for the NRIs, Article 6 and 13 of DTAA. I have also ventured to include joint development agreements because which is the flavor of the day, be that Kerala or Bombay, so that there is a very important insertion of provisions which we will discuss about it. Then there is also a new provision which has been inserted in the form of 50 CA, which also revolves around the computation of capital gains. And lastly, I have taken up some good issues on 54 and 54F, which continue to be debatable. Issues which are known, which are general, and which are settled, I have chosen not to address them, but issues which remain debatable even after 40 years of their insertion. Those issues which I have chosen so that when we practice direct tax laws, and these issues of 54 and 54F are the issues which all of us visit them on a regular basis. So therefore, maybe, they would be of some interest to the audience. So first we will take up the general provisions. Thank you. First, we will take up the general provisions just to refresh your thoughts on NRI taxation, that even when we are understanding NRI capital gains taxation, it's very essential to understand what are the general provisions which are affecting computation of all kinds, computation of capital gains of all kinds. Just to refresh, we are not going to discuss these provisions, just to refresh. And what are they? Our journey of capital gains, they start with understanding section 224, which defines income. By virtue of clause 6, a capital gain also is considered to be an income. And once it is considered to be an income, it becomes a part of the total income by virtue of section 2 subsection 45. If it is so, if it is part of total income, the charge of tax is activated under section 4 and its scope is defined by section 5. Whether we are resident or we are non-resident, or whether we are resident but not ordinarily resident, is defined by section 6. There is a dimming fiction which assumes, which provides that certain income, even though it may not be an income, it would be considered as an income taxable in India, and therefore that is a dimming fiction which considers a capital gain on transfer of capital asset also a part of the income which is liable to be taxed in India. Then there are a host of provisions, subsections, about 50 plus in section 10, which provides for different kinds of exemptions specified in this section 10. Some of them are relating to non-resident, and it would be advisable for all of us to understand them, not today, but whenever we are practicing the non-resident individuals taxation. Then the heads of income are in section 14. One of the head of income is capital gains. Then this income is required to be computed as per chapter 4D. Capital gains is required to be computed as per chapter 4D. These provisions are contained not in 48 to 58. I'm sorry that it is 45 to 55A. It includes Dimming fictions of 45.2 to 45.6, which is equally applicable to NRIs also. Then there are dimming provisions of 50A, 50B, 50C, 50CA, and 50D, as also section 50, which is missed. I'm sorry for that. So these are the provisions, say, which are equally applicable to a non-resident and therefore also to an NRI. Then there are provisions, important provisions, which are contained in section 54 to 54AH. They also apply to non-residents. Then there is important definition of transfer under section 2, subsection 47, and no transfer cases. And there are plenty of them, about 25, which are defined under section 47. Then the computation of gains will be specifically under section 48 and 55, which provides that full value of consideration, that is sale consideration, is to be deducted by cost of acquisition or cost of improvement plus expenditure relating to transfer in order to determine what is the capital gain for the year under consideration, which would be taxed and charged to tax. Then we have provision in section 49 for cost of acquisition to be adopted or as that of previous owner. Then we have beautiful provisions about short-term capital asset and long-term capital asset. When an asset which is short-term is transferred, it will give you short-term capital gains. And a long-term capital asset, when it is transferred, it will give you long-term capital gains. Then there are provisions for substitution of fair market value as on 1/4/2001, and there are equally good provisions about indexation. All of them are provisions which you practice on a daily basis, but I just thought of placing before you because it will refresh our memory and it will help the discussion which will now unfold. There are provisions relating to set-off of losses, carry forward of such losses, and set off of such losses against the gains of the subsequent year. Then, importantly, there are special rates, concessional rates provided, which are all listed in section 111A, 112, 12A, and 115AC, which is going to be the subject of detailed discussion. Chapter 12A, which once again is going to be subject of detailed discussion today. With that, I would move to NRI specific special provisions. All of you are conversant with that, but this requires refreshing in detail because this is the talk, subject on which we are going to talk about. So what are these provisions? We will start our journey by referring to first proviso to section 48 and rule 115. Both these provisions are specific to NRIs. Both these provisions are specific to NRIs. So what do they say? They say that whenever there is capital gains on transfer of shares or debentures, on transfer of shares and debentures or bonds issued by an Indian company, if such shares or bonds or debentures are acquired in foreign currency on purchase or even on reinvestment of such purchase shares, then in such case, the capital gains which we are required to compute are required to be computed not in Indian national rupees, but in foreign currency, the currency in which we had initially acquired these assets. So if you have acquired assets, say in Russian rubles, then in that case, the computation of capital gains would be in rubles. If you have acquired it in US dollars, the computation of capital gains would be in US dollars and not in the Indian national rupees. This is very important. It is a serious advantage which all non-resident individuals or non-residents have. And what is to be computed in the foreign currency? A, the cost of acquisition of the asset is to be computed in foreign currency. Expenditure incurred on transfer of an asset is also, even though incurred in Indian currency, you have to compute it in foreign currency. Sale consideration, that also is required to be computed in foreign currency. So, and whatever is the capital gain which you have computed in US dollars or Russian rubles, after having completed this arithmetical exercise, you have to convert the capital gains at the foot of the account into Indian national rupees. So if you have acquired shares for $10,000 in 1998, which have been sold for $100,000 in 2021, your capital gain would be 99,000 US dollars. And it is this 99,000 US dollars you would now convert for the first time in Indian national rupees on the exchange rate prevailing on the date of sale or transfer. It is this 99,000 US dollar, assuming that the prevailing rate is 70 rupees, you will convert this into Indian national rupees. And this is the amount of capital gains that would be liable to be taxed. To give you another example is that if this 10,000 US dollars, which in 1998 you had acquired for 21 rupees, have been sold in 2021 for $10,000 only. Assume that there is no foreign currency appreciation. Even in such cases, your capital gain would be computed in foreign currency, which will be 0 US dollars. But you perhaps would gain handsomely on account of appreciation in the rate of foreign exchange, which has jumped from 21 rupees to 70 rupees. So you have a gain of about 50 rupees per share. And this 50 rupees per share, which is actual gains in foreign currency, is not taxable at all. Is not taxable at all. So what is filtered by the Income Tax Act is that if there is no appreciation in the value of shares, it is only on account of value of foreign currency, that gain would not be taxable. That gain would not be taxable. Now the question arises that which is the rate which you will apply. That for that an answer is provided by Rule 115. We have provided you with a table. When we visit that table, we will understand that what rates, telegraph transfer rates we have to adopt for computing the capital gains in foreign currency. Important thing which we have to take home here is that in computing this capital gain, if you want the benefit of foreign currency computation, indexation will not be possible for the non-resident who computes, who chooses to compute the capital gains in foreign currency. It applies to assets which are held as capital assets and not to stock in trade. It applies to short-term capital gain as also long-term capital gains. A very wonderful advantage. Even where the amount is gains are in short-term capital gain, it applies to that. And it applies to the assets which are prescribed, whether the shares are and debentures are listed or otherwise, whether the shares are preference shares or class shares. All these are not relevant. This benefit of proviso, first proviso, is applicable. Beautifully, even where the original shares which you had acquired are sold but are reinvested in purchasing shares or debentures or bonds of another company, even in such case, when you transfer those assets, at that time also this benefit of, foreign currency computation would be available. It is not available in respect of units of mutual funds or that of business trust or government bonds. It's available to bonds of the Indian companies, but not to the government bonds by virtue of the third proviso. Then there is another proviso that is known as fifth proviso, which is restricted in its application to rupee denominated loans, which is restricted to rupee denominated bonds. In this case, there is a wonderful exemption which has been given, that if there is an appreciation, here the computation would be in Indian rupees, but it would not be in foreign currency. But whatever is the appreciation in foreign currency, that would not be brought to tax. That would not be brought to tax. Simultaneously, if there is a depreciation, that benefit of depreciation would be allowed to you. And if you have losses, those losses would be allowed to be set off against the other income to the extent permissible. So, and in this case of rupee denominated bonds of Indian company, you would be entitled to compute your capital gains in foreign currency at later on, because appreciation is ignored. So that is as good as computation in foreign currency, even though benefit of provisions of first proviso are not available. And secondly, indexation benefit would be possible here. Acquisition on conversion, bonus, gift, mergers, that is amalgamation, demergers, and also inheritance. There is no specific provision as regards application of foreign currency first proviso, but I would take a view that if original asset was acquired in foreign currency, then all subsequent acquisitions like bonus, if the donor had acquired it in foreign currency, then for gift, if there is an amalgamation wherein original shares were acquired in foreign currency, so is in demerger. And inheritance, if my father had acquired shares in foreign currency, the benefit should flow to me for computation of my capital gains in foreign currency, though no specific provision has been explicitly made, but this would be a reasonable and a correct view. There is, for application of first proviso, debentures are entitled. Debentures are entitled. Bonds of Indian companies are entitled, but other bonds are not entitled. So therefore, one would wonder, are debentures not bonds? Are they different than bonds? If the answer is bonds are different than debentures, then benefit of first proviso would not be available. These are the rates, which you will have to carry. What is provided is average rate of telegraphic transfer for buying and the selling on a particular day, that is the cost on the date of acquisition, is the rate, is the conversion rate which you have to take. Similarly, for selling also on the date of transfer, you need to do so. Similarly, for expenditure on transfer, even when they are incurred little ahead of transfer, the rate which you are allowed to adopt is the date of transfer. And after having computed your capital gain, you will reconvert this capital gain in foreign currency into Indian rupees. And what is the rate you would take? The one which is TTBR, average of TTBR, TTSR on the date of transfer. They are simple things. There are some issues surrounding this rate of exchange. We shall deal with as and when we address that. There are some important issues in understanding of this particular rate of exchange first proviso. What is the first promise? That you are required to adopt uniform rate of exchange, which is adopted for the sale of on the date of transfer and also the capital gains. You cannot take two different rates if there is some difference between the date of transfer and the realization of that. You will have to take the uniform route for the purposes of, you have this Karnataka High Court decision which confirms this. Then there was an old decision which I would believe is not applicable anymore, which had said that you should adopt the same rate of exchange for cost of acquisition as also full value of consideration. This decision, I believe, now archaic for the reason that now 115 very clearly provides that you have to take three different rates. You have to take three different rates, and therefore Rule 115 should prevail over the ratio of this decision. Then, when transactions have taken place in Indian national rupees and not in foreign currency, the benefit of the first proviso would not be available. In other words, you will not be allowed to compute the capital gains in foreign currency. You will have to compute it in Indian national rupees only. And when you do so, you will have the benefit of indexation, but you will not have the benefit of computation in foreign currency. Then the next is that even where sale is taking place in Indian national rupees in India, then in such case, the Bombay High Court says that the benefit of Rule 115 would not be available. This is a debatable issue, but there is a Bombay High Court decision which is the jurisdictional high court for me. Therefore, I have thought about placing it before you, so that in such cases, so what is desired is that the sale and purchase both should be in foreign currency. Only in that case, benefit of Rule 115 and first proviso would be allowable. Right. The person who is deducting tax at source on payment which is being given to you would be deducting tax at source on the date when by applying the rate on the date when he is deducting actually the tax at source. This creates a serious mismatch between the capital gains and the TDS. In such case, an amount which would be reflected as your full value of consideration in Form 26 AS is going to be different than the amount which is realized by you. In such cases, the courts have advised that in such case, what is important for capital gains is the rate which was prevailing on the date of transfer, Proceeding further is that we have a Supreme Court decision which says that the rate of foreign exchange that would be taken would be not the last day of year, but would be the date on which the transaction has actually taken place. And what is that transaction? The transaction of transfer. That you will keep that in mind. Even where seller has not acquired asset in foreign currency, that is when it has been acquired by way of gift or inheritance, and if the original investment was made in foreign currency, the benefit will travel and flow to the ultimate donee, ultimate transferor. Then let us come to second proviso. This is specifically made not applicable to non-resident, and therefore a mention is made that even where a transaction, even where a capital gain arises to a non-resident, if he wants the benefit of indexation, then in that case, he is prohibited, he is precluded from applying the benefit of computation in foreign currency, which we saw in detail. So when you compute capital gains, even where you are non-resident, in respect of assets, other than those assets to which first proviso applies, you are welcome to take the benefit of first proviso. You are also welcome to take the benefit even where your case falls under the fifth proviso for rupee denominated bonds, gains relating to that. So in such view of the matter, independent of chapter 12D, 115D 2A, you will have the benefit of indexation. We will address this once again when we visit that provision. Carrying this further, is that there is a special provision for computation of rate of taxation in case where a non-resident or non-resident Indian is in receipt of short-term capital gain. There is a benefit which is equally available to non-resident also, but which is equally available to resident. So all of you are very familiar with this. In short, what I am trying to put before you is that in this case, your income would be taxed at the rate of 15%. If the gains is in respect of equity transfer of equity shares or units of EOF or the units of business trust, right? In this case, the benefit of computation in foreign currency would surely available, but if that is available, the benefit of indexation would not be available, just to keep in mind. There is a view that in this case, that basic exemption of threshold limit of 2,50,000 to 5 lakhs of rupees would not be possible for non-resident because it is explicitly made available under section 111A only to resident and not to non-resident individual. I would take this view, with a pinch of salt, and I'll invite your attention to Article 24 of the DTAA, which provides for non-discrimination, which holds that, in the matters of taxation, you cannot, prohibit a person from enjoying a benefit or deny a benefit to an assessee simply on the basis of residential status of a person. So I would recommend that, that wherever, if DTAA provides for a lower rate, which it does in many cases of say 10%, and in such cases wherein most favored nation clause applies, then it could be as low as 5%, and you can surely try. This is not beyond litigation, but it is something which is tryable. This is as far as 111A, qua the non-residents are concerned, is something which I have placed before you. Coming to 112, which is a provision which continues to apply, which is a provision in relation to long-term capital gains in respect of, all capital assets other than those which are covered by section 112A. So whenever you have long-term capital gain, say on transfer of immovable property or such non-specified asset, in such case, you are welcome to be taxed at 20%, which is a concessional rate as compared to the regular rate of 34% or 30%. What is important here is that you are also having a benefit of paying only 10% of tax, 10% of capital gains by way of taxes, provided you do not claim the benefit of indexation and the transfer is in relation to listed securities other than units or zero coupon bonds. In such cases, you are entitled to peg your rate of taxation at 10%. There is another provisions which also provision which provides that when you transfer unlisted shares and securities, then in that case, if you decide not to opt for foreign currency computation and also not to take benefit of indexation, then in that case, in my considered view, you will still be entitled to pay tax only at 10%. And lastly, that on application of Article 24, if the rate is yet less than 10%, on application of DTAA, you are welcome to try your luck there also, as far as 112 is concerned. Yeah, there has been a raging controversy that whether a non-resident can ever claim the benefit of paying tax at 10% by ignoring the indexation. This controversy is sought to be settled by these three decisions, which I have listed before you, headed by Delhi High Court decision in Kane UK Holdings case, which says that even where gains are computed in foreign currency and the assessee is not otherwise entitled to the benefit of indexation, and even where shares are transferred through off-market transaction, even though shares are listed, then in such cases, the person would be entitled to pay the tax at the rate of just 10% and not 20%. There is yet another Delhi tribunal decision, a nice one, which says that even where a foreign currency asset which you had acquired in foreign currency, when you acquired it, it was a capital asset. When you later on converted it to stock in trade, and when you sold it at that time also, in respect of the capital gains which is frozen on account of section 45(2), would be entitled to the benefit of paying taxes at the rate of 10%, will be entitled to compute capital gains in foreign currency, and therefore I would believe that this is loan decision which is singularly beneficial to assesses those who have ventured to convert the capital asset into stock in trade, into stock in trade. Moving forward to 112A, here also is a beautiful provision, all of you are familiar, which is a new provision. When you transfer equity shares or units of UOF or unit of business trust, which are listed on these, in respect of which STT is paid in the beginning, that is on acquisition, and if they are shares, it is paid also on transfer. If it is units, then in that case, STT is required to be paid not necessarily on purchase of units, but surely on transfer of units. Then in such case, you are entitled to pay tax on capital gains, which is computed in a very beneficial manner at 10%. And if applying DTAA Article 24 in particular, if the gain is less than 10%, I mean tax payable is less than 10%, you are welcome to tax it at 5%. This is just I have listed that how to compute capital gains for how to compute the cost of acquisition, which is provided in 55(2) AC, which is forcefully applicable to NRI also, non-resident also. So therefore, just to refresh it, I have placed it before you. Then there is a specific provision in the form of 115 AC, which is taxing the long-term capital gains besides interest and dividend of a non-resident, any non-resident, need not be a non-resident individual. If the long-term capital gain is in relation to transfer of bonds of an Indian company, which have been issued overseas in a foreign land, and it has been purchased in foreign currency, then in such case, or the bonds of public sector company sold by the government and purchased in forex, or the global depository receipts purchased in foreign currency, in all such cases, whatever gains you make, they would be liable to be taxed at a highly concessional rate of 10%, highly concessional, provided you would not be allowed any expenditure or allowance in computing the capital gain. You will also not be entitled to Chapter 6A deductions. And by way of a concession, it has been mentioned that there is no compulsion for you to file the return of income if your income comprises only of interest and dividend on which tax has been deducted at source. What a catch over here is that if you are in receipt of a long-term capital gain, you will be taxed at 10%, but you will have to file the return of income, even though tax has been deducted at source. Now we come to an all-important provisions of Chapter 12A, which is not which not all non-residents are eligible to enjoy. These provisions are eligible or provided for only in respect of non-resident individuals. Non-resident individuals. So therefore, we will discuss this, understand these provisions are there for donkey's ears. There are some issues which are arising, which I will place before you. Those of you who have freshly started practice of income tax, if they would like to understand these provisions, I will refresh your knowledge about these. So let us start. The all important provision is that, that is section 115E. The provisions are contained in section 115C to 115I, but important provision is a part of section 115E, which provides for special rate of taxation in relation to the long-term capital gains, mind you, long-term capital gains and investment income at highly concessional rates. And what are they? It provides that tax will be payable on an investment income which is other than the long-term capital gains, which could be specified investment income. What is that? We will discuss it in a short while. But if it is long-term capital gain on specified or even non-specified assets, the tax payable would be concessional rate of 10% plus surcharge and education cess wherever applicable. And in relation to other gains, other income of the non-resident individuals, it would be taxed at the regular rates. Because this is a specific provision providing you with special benefits, and there is a special chapter devoted for computation of gain itself. It's a code by itself, and therefore I would take a considered view that it is highly doubtful and suspect that the benefit of DTAA may not apply. You are welcome to choose DTAA if you feel that is more beneficial. But once you have stepped into the code of 12A, then in such case, you will have to apply the rate which is provided by the code itself. Moving further, that 115E refers to various terminologies. One of them is investment income. Investment income means any income derived from a foreign exchange asset by a non-resident individual. If you have acquired any asset in a foreign exchange, and if you have derived any income in relation to that, you are welcome to enjoy the benefit under Chapter 12A. What is a long-term capital gains? It's differently defined than an investment. It means these are all exhaustively defined. There is no scope for including anything. It means income chargeable under the head capital gains in relation to an asset which is held for which is a long-term capital asset, which is acquired in a foreign exchange, and which excludes a short-term capital asset. So if the gain is relating to short-term capital asset, you will not be entitled to claim the benefit of 10%. But if it becomes an investment income, then in that case, you may be paying taxes at 20%. And if you are entitled to benefit of 115A, then you better pay tax under 115A and not under Chapter 12A in respect of short-term capital gain. What is a forex asset? A foreign exchange asset is any specified asset which the assessee has acquired or purchased with or subscribed to in convertible foreign exchange. Mind you, a foreign exchange asset is differently defined than a specified asset. And most of the benefits are attached to specified asset. So what does a specified asset means? It means shares in an Indian company by virtue of a very old circular issued not by the CBDT but by Reserve Bank of India. It has been provided that even where right shares are issued or when bonus shares are issued, those would also be considered as a foreign exchange asset and therefore can qualify to be treated as a specified asset. Even where you have not paid any money for acquiring bonus shares, you have not paid it in foreign currency. When shares are issued by an Indian public company, when debentures are issued by an Indian public company, they are also specified assets. When you have deposited in a public fixed deposits of an Indian company, not a private company, they also qualify to be treated as a specified asset. Any security of the central government, if it is acquired in foreign currency, they also would be specified assets. And any other asset which has been notified by central government to be treated as a specified asset for the purposes of Chapter 12 would also be considered as a specified asset. Importantly, a non-resident Indian is defined exhaustively to mean only an individual who has been a citizen of India or who is a person of Indian origin and in the year in which he is seeking to apply these provisions, he is not a resident, at the time of transfer under Section 6 of the India Income Tax Act. If all these provisions are satisfied, then in that case, you would be eligible to claim the benefit of concessional rate of taxation at 10%. So what we have understood, ladies and gentlemen, is that this benefit is restricted to only a non-resident individual. No other entity is entitled, no other persons, even where individual, even where they are otherwise non-resident, they would not be entitled to benefit. If you are a non-resident, if you are a resident but not ordinarily resident, in my opinion, you will be entitled to claim the benefit. If you are a non-resident and happens to be non-resident individual, the benefit of this provision, you will be entitled to here. Moving further is that if you are taking a benefit under Chapter 12, you will not be entitled to claim any deduction of expenditure or allowance in respect of investment income, that is interest and dividend. You will also not be entitled to claim Chapter 6A deduction even in respect of long-term capital gain. The benefit of computation in foreign currency will continue. The benefit of indexation would not be possible by virtue of a very peculiar language of 115D2A, which I spoke about while talking about Section 48 and the benefit of indexation. The considered professional view is that benefit of indexation would not be possible where you are computing your capital gains under Chapter 12A of the Income Tax Act. Moving further, 12A proceeds further, it gives you another advantage, another benefit, whereunder it invites you to not to pay any tax at all. You would not pay any tax where you transfer an asset, which is a forex asset. It need not be a specified asset. As I have been saying repetitively, that a specified asset is different than a forex asset. Forex asset is wide. A specific asset has to be a forex asset, but a forex asset need not be a specified asset. So any forex asset, if you are transferring, if it is a long-term capital asset, and if you have made gains, which you are reinvesting which you are reinvesting in acquiring this time specified asset. This time the reinvestment has to be in specified asset and not necessarily a forex asset. So a specified asset is the one which A, to begin with a forex asset, and B, it still is a specified asset. If you satisfy these, or you acquire saving certificates which presently are national saving certificate, they are notified for this chapter 12A, and such acquisition in foreign currency in this specified asset or in the national savings certificates is within a period of 6 months, from the date of transfer, from the date of long-term capital gains. And if you keep this new asset for a period of 3 years, you would not be paying any tax. You would not be paying zero tax. So if you see the benefit, combined benefit with the computation in foreign currency and the reinvestment oriented benefit, a non-resident in many cases, non-resident individual in many cases may be paying either no tax or very little tax. Moving further is that this benefit of exemption under 115F would be withdrawn where you transfer this new asset within a period of 3 years. Where you transfer this asset within a period of 3 years, the benefit would be withdrawn in the year in which you transfer the asset. In the year in which you transfer the asset, and the tax which would be payable would be on a long-term capital gain. There will be a deeming fiction which will be activated for treating the gain as the long-term capital gain, and it would be taxed as the highly concessional rate in that year, if provided they are liable, you are eligible for such. Then there is the carrying the benefit further, that a non-resident individual who has an investment income and long-term capital gain, one or both, then in such case he is permitted not to file return of income provided he has no other income, and further provided tax has been deducted at source on such income. Moving further, it's so nicely provided because this is one of the chapters which has looked into the difficulties comprehensively. So which is now providing that even where you return for good from a foreign land to your homeland, which is India, even in that case, whenever you make investment income or you make long-term capital gain, if you have continued to hold this foreign currency asset, then on transfer of such asset, you will be entitled to claim the benefit of this chapter. You will be entitled to claim the benefit for this chapter, only in respect of the investment income and not in respect of the capital gains. But even for investment income, this is a handsome benefit, and you can surely enjoy this benefit after you return to your country. Further, that this change of status benefit is also flowing to your legal heir, even where the original investor has died and this foreign currency asset is inherited by a legal heir. The legal heir also would continue to enjoy the benefit of this chapter in relation to the investment income. You have an option if you do not like the provisions of this chapter 12A, like it may happen in case of short-term capital gains. Then in that case, you are welcome to opt out of this chapter by filing a return of income for an assessment year for which you do not wish this chapter to apply to you, provided you file a separate declaration along with the return of income, requesting that regular provisions of Income Tax Act should apply to you in preference to the provisions of Chapter 12A. If you do so, then in that case, this provision would not apply. Importantly, the option is to be exercised year after year. So if you do not exercise the option to opt out in the subsequent year, then in that case, you are welcome to do so. In such case, for the next subsequent year, you will be benefited by the provisions of Chapter 12A, which will be automatically applicable to you. Carrying the discussion on Chapter 12A further, now we will touch upon few important issues, controversies. First is whether a bonus share which is not acquired in foreign currency, is the benefit applicable or not? As we have seen that the courts have examined the benefit of this circular, though issued under FEMA, to hold that something which is considered as a foreign exchange asset under FEMA should also be qualifying to be treated as a forex asset, even though not so defined specifically under Chapter 12A, would be considered to be beneficial, and the benefit of Chapter 12A would be applicable. These are Chennai Tribunal decision and Mumbai Tribunal decision, highly appropriate and beneficial spaces. Then investment in nationalized bank. Now nationalized banks are not necessarily a specified investment. Howsoever, in cases where the bank happens to be an Indian public company, then in such case, such investments in the deposits of banks would qualify to be treated as specified assets, and whatever income you make in relation to such deposits would also qualify, is the decision of the authority for advance ruling. Similarly, when your original NRE account or NRNR account is converted into NRO account, even in such cases, your benefit will continue, and this is also provided by AAR. Interest on NRO deposit. If the original investment was made in foreign currency, even though it is an NRO deposit, not an NRE account, it will qualify for a concessional rate of taxation. Next is if you have invested in deposits out of the interest of the forex deposits, the new deposit which you have made out of interest income, Madras High Court says that such an interest which you will claim on new deposit would not be eligible for the benefit of Chapter 12A. Will not be paying tax, will be paying tax at regular rate of deduction. There is a lone Kerala High Court decision which has held that, though benefit of Chapter 6A deduction would not be possible, but the benefit of rebate, if it is otherwise available, then it would be allowed to such a person. Presently, only 87A is a provision which provides for rebate and which is specifically excluding a non-resident from enjoying such a benefit. Therefore, in my considered professional view, presently no rebate is possible. The time when this decision was delivered, at that time Section 88 was granting a rebate, and which was a handsome rebate, which was the court said that it is possible. There is always a fierce debate. Whether a short-term capital gain will be entitled to claim the benefit of Chapter 12 or not. Delhi Tribunal way back, stated that you are entitled to such a benefit. After some years, Mumbai Tribunal held that it is not possible. Now the issue as far as the Bombay jurisdiction is concerned is settled in favor of the Revenue Department, which this decision reported in 275 ITR 345 provides that the benefit of Chapter 12A would not be possible for a person who is in receipt of a short-term capital gain, even though it is in relation to an asset which is acquired in a forex, in foreign currency, in foreign exchange. Transfer of non-resident rupee account from one bank to another, non-rupee account, sorry, from one bank to another, would also be eligible for the benefit of this Chapter 12A. Then we move on to DTAA, just a reference that when a non-resident who happens to be a non-resident individual, if he transfers an immovable property, that gains would be taxed in the place where such an immovable property is situated, irrespective of his residence under the Income Tax Act or under the Foreign Country Tax Act. It would be taxed under Article 6, in a place where such immovable property is situated. There are good deal of controversies that what would be immovable property. But that is not the subject of discussion today. Will that immovable property be restricted to land and building, or it will encompass anything which is considered as an immovable property under the Transfer of Property Act or General Clauses Act, is a question which is haunting people world over, because whether the domestic law will define the the term individual immovable property or not is debatable, and I don't wish to discuss today because it's widely applicable to all non-residents and not necessarily to non-resident individuals. As regards movable property is concerned, it would be taxed in the country of residence of the person. So it would be taxed in the hands of the residence of person. So even where an Indian who is resident of UK, if he is transferring shares in India and the source of gains is in India, even in such case, the gains would be taxed in the country which is the United Kingdom. So this is an important provision by virtue of Article 13 of DTAA. The taxation would be on these lines. With this, Chairman sir, see, if you wish, we can take a break for 5 minutes, reassemble